Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fortitude Fix. I hope you're well. My name is DaShanna, and in today's video, I'm gonna take you all back in time, trip down memory lane. I want to share with you Aurora's birth story. If you have not seen the birth vlogs of Nova and Aurora, I do have those up on my channel. I'll go ahead and link the playlist up here for you, but I wanted to put this video out there because one, it's been a while. I had Aurora back in May 2022. I don't know, there's been like this pull to share more of my actual birth experience. I know I vlogged it, but wanted to kind of like share what happened and what was said, what was done, how I felt, all of that stuff. So I did sit down and film a birth story with Aurora a few weeks postpartum, and so that's what I want to share with you all today. I had just had a baby. I'm very tired. I look tired in this video, but I still think it's worth sharing. So if you're interested in hearing about my second vaginal delivery to an almost 10-pound baby, and we also had a scheduled induction at 39 weeks in a couple of days because she was just growing and she was getting so big. Oh my gosh, it's just the whole thing. There was a scare with me and my health, and I was terrified. My husband was nervous. Like, there's a lot. Let's just say a bunch of people had to rush in and put a stop to everything. So if you're interested in hearing all of that, such an interesting roller coaster of a story, go ahead and just keep on watching. Before we get started with today's video, I just wanted to send a little bit of a disclaimer out there to you all who are viewing this video. I will be talking about blood loss and postpartum hemorrhage. I will be talking about the administration of drugs such as an epidural. I will be also talking about my induction experience and what happened throughout my birth, labor, delivery, and a little bit of postpartum. So if you're interested in hearing about those things, go ahead and just keep on watching. Okay, so I have some notes in my phone. I'm gonna go ahead and pull those up. A bit of background: I recently gave birth to our second baby, a baby girl, in May. She was born on Mother's Day, and I have sickle cell disease type SC, hemoglobin. I also have 2 large fibroids that seemed to matter throughout this pregnancy in regard to how they monitored me, how many appointments I had, NSTs or non-stress tests that I had, etc., etc. I had a scheduled induction, so my birth story really does start there. I had the Foley bulb inserted into my cervix, and then I was sent home. And then overnight, my induction date and time was the very next day. So the Foley bulb was supposed to do its job and dilate the cervix to kickstart labor. So the very next day, I went in to the induction appointment to just have a baby, and we arrived about 9:30 a.m. I was about 3 to 4 centimeters dilated when they removed the Foley bulb. They took my blood, they inserted the IV, they got me set up with the monitors, and got me dressed in that ever so lovely gown. I immediately had an ultrasound just to check on things, to make sure placement of the monitors were going well, and to check the status of the fibroids also. At about 10 a.m., I was about 4 or 5 centimeters. I got a COVID swab for me. They did not test my husband, which was interesting. And then I got another swab because I was at the ER like the night before with issues having to deal with my left arm pain that I had toward the end of this pregnancy. They started me on Pitocin around 11 o'clock, and they put it at a level 2, and then they upped it to a level 4 around noon. I have no idea what happened. I was comfortable. We were chilling, watching TV. Around 2:15 in the afternoon, The Pitocin was at a level 8, and they told me that they wanted to do another cervical check around 3 o'clock. A little bit before 3 o'clock, they came in. I was at a solid 5, if not like 5.5, 6. So they ended up breaking my bag of waters at that point and said they'd be back around 8 o'clock to check on my status. So, okay. When I gave birth to my first daughter in 2020, they also broke my bag of waters, but it was nothing compared to this time. This time, I immediately felt more pressure. I immediately felt a huge like pop and gush, and then I was gushing for the next hour. There was so much water. This baby number 2, was in so much water, and that's probably why I look so big. Everyone thought I was having twins. I mean, they thought the same thing with my first pregnancy, but this time for sure. And I was really big, so I lost the water. And even my nurse came back and was like, whoa, like your belly, like you look completely different. I had to keep calling them in to come and change, you know, the little pad that they have underneath you and your underwears, you know, the mesh underwears and all the things. They had to like mop up the floor all these times. I was leaking and gushing water a lot. I did request to have monitors that I could move around the room with. So they basically put the IV with the Pitocin with the monitoring on one pole, and I was able to like move around the room with that, go to the restroom, etc. I did not want to be like tied to the bed. And so because I was able to really move so much, that a lot of the water was, you know, gushing and leaking out because I was moving. All right, so about 4:35, I realized that the Pitocin was up to a 10, and I started to feel my contractions a lot stronger. I did not have back labor this time. I had back labor with Nova. She was in a very interesting position. So this time, I was doing okay. I was doing all the breathing techniques and everything that I know and have learned and have even taught some of the moms that I've worked with. And so I just felt like I could do this perhaps without an epidural. The only thing that was hard was the left arm pain that I was having. It was terrible pain. And then the pain of contractions, my mind was just in so many different places. And there really is no point, in my opinion, for me to struggle and be in agony with contraction pain as well as this arm pain. And I know the contraction pain is only gonna get stronger. So I was having the conversation and the thought with my husband about potentially having an earlier epidural before things got way, way too painful for me. I did not want to risk having like a sickle cell crisis. I haven't ever had one during pregnancy or delivery at all, but again, when your body is in so much pain already and kind of distress, it just makes your body more prone. So I wanted to keep that in mind also. I did end up getting the epidural about 7:30 p.m. They did check me, I think, after the epidural, and I was still at like a 5, 6. And so I was like, what is going on? I got comfortable, I was able to sleep a little bit, and before I knew it, it was go time. I will say, I don't know what time this was, but I'll check some of our camera footage, but my epidural wore off on one side. So they did give me like the button to press, and it's like you can't give yourself too much because it's on like a timer, so don't even worry about it. And I pressed it and nothing happened. They were like, oh, just wait, 20 minutes and you'll feel something. So I waited, nothing happened. I called them back in again multiple times, like, hey, I pressed it, it's not working. My epidural has worn off on one side. And at this point, these contractions were out of this world. And so to feel it on one side was really strange. I'm the type of person that I don't like to not be in control. So this epidural was working a little too good in the very beginning, and I couldn't feel my leg, I couldn't feel anything. When I had my first daughter, I was still able to feel, like I had feeling, but it just took the edge off. This time I couldn't feel anything. My legs felt weird to my hands when I touched them. It was just a really strange sensation, and it made me a little uncomfortable. So I had to like rely on some of my doula training and like my breathing not to like freak out. So the fact that this epidural wore off on my right side and I could feel these insane contractions and nothing was working, the button wasn't working, I told them, I was like, so what are we gonna do about this? Right? It's been, I don't know, 40 minutes at this point. You said I was gonna feel something at like 15, 20 minutes. So next thing I know, the anesthesiologist came back who inserted my original epidural, came back, and he was amazing. He was a black man, and my husband and him were talking about sports and such. Anyway, he came back with like a needle with a dose of something, and he put it not directly into my back, of course, but he put it into the tube that connected my epidural to the machine, and he inserted it there, and I was just like, this is amazing. My pain was gone. At that point, I was calm, relaxed. They did check me. I feel like this is, at this point when they come back and check me, it's like 2 a.m. or something, and I am 10 centimeters. I am ready to go. I will say that I had a nurse, I had another nurse who was kind of checking in on me too. I had a midwife and then a midwife in training who was all there kind of during this last check, like, hey, you're gonna start pushing soon if you want. So I was like, of course I want. I'm not gonna, like, you know, say no. I began pushing about 2:10. So they had, my nurse basically kicked the midwives out and was like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna have this baby. I like to get my moms ready. We're not gonna be pushing for a whole hour or 2 hours. We're gonna have this baby soon. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So she kicked everyone out. It was quiet, it was semi-dark in the room. My husband was there, and I was just getting into the zone, and she was great. My nurse was amazing, and I tell you, I was pushing, I was giving the good pushes, and baby was like dang near here, okay? She had to say, okay, great, everybody come back, like, we're ready to have a baby. So she's like, this happens all the time. Everyone rushes in and then they scare the contractions away. And so that's what happened, is everyone rushed in, they're all getting set up and dressed, and all the spotlight is on me, my legs are up in the stirrups, and my contractions like took forever to come back. So I wasn't pushing as frequently. Long story short, I was able to kind of get in the groove of it, and I gave birth to my second daughter at 3:02 a.m. She was 9 pounds and 14 ounces. She was 21.5 inches long. So when she came out, I did hear that her shoulders were stuck. They said in my record and there that my baby's shoulders were stuck for about 20 seconds. All I remember is they were like, the head, and then everyone rushed to my vagina, it felt like, and that was when they were maneuvering her to get her shoulders through. So she came through, they put her on my chest. She wasn't crying, she was more so whimpering, and then eventually she started to cry, but there was a lot of like mucus that I heard in her cry, so we wanted her to continue crying, right? To ensure her lungs were working and that fluid was, you know, getting out of there and all that good stuff. So at this point, I'm holding the baby, baby's crying, you know, my husband's like, oh my gosh, it's so great, we're all having a moment, and they're pushing down, they're, you know, delivering the placenta. The placenta looked great, actually. They asked if I wanted to see it, it was amazing. There were no pieces left behind that they could see. They pushed and got some more blood out, and it was technically a postpartum hemorrhage because it was about 600 milliliters of blood that I lost, and I believe anywhere from 500 up for a vaginal delivery is considered a hemorrhage. So at this point, I had lost 600 milliliters of blood. They got everything together, everything was going great, and I was bonding with my newborn and doing some skin to skin. I wanna say about 30 minutes later, you know how they check and push down on the top of your uterus to just ensure the bleeding is contained. So when they came to do that, my nurse who helped me deliver the baby came to do that, and things were okay. A little bit after that, I personally felt a huge gush, like it was like blood clot after blood clot coming out. And I told the nurse, and the nurse saw. She didn't say anything to me. She made a phone call. I want to say like 10 people rushed in. 10 people rushed in. Somebody came in with an ultrasound machine. Both the midwives came back. There were like 4 nurses. There was the nurse for the baby, my husband, and like 2 other people. Like the OB came, I think. It was just so many people. And so they gracefully took my baby from my chest to the other side, and I made sure my husband went because they still had, you know, certain tests to do and wanted to get her weight and all that stuff. So I had my husband go with the baby. Even though I had a clear sight of them, they were just on the other side of the room, I wanted him to be with her. I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. They do an ultrasound. They're like, oh my gosh, is something there from the placenta? I got an emergency IV. Someone stuck my arm randomly with an IV. I feel this prick on my right leg. Apparently I got a shot of something. I'll put the name down here. And all of this was them doing their job. And I'm grateful for them. I'm so happy that they all sprung into motion and did what they needed to do to control this bleeding. But in the moment, it was a lot for me to take in. And you know, everyone had been so chill and it's been very quiet and this is what we're gonna do now. If you're okay with it, I'm gonna touch you. Is that all right? Like, it was very inclusive, which I appreciated, but then it just switched and it was just like emergency. And they were all trying to keep me calm, but I just know from my experience and my work as a doula and my training that like, they mean business right now. And so I was like, okay, let's just get me to be okay, right? When everything kind of slowed down, they were able to stop the bleeding. They never had to use that emergency IV, but they had it there because, again, the Pitocin was running in this one to stop the contractions and get my uterus to contract. So I feel like somebody put something in my IV, somebody, you know, the new IV was on this arm, and it was just a lot happening. So after all was said and done, I did have a small laceration or tear, so I ended up having to get 2 stitches. Everything was good. I don't know what caused the additional blood loss that I had, but I do know that it rose the milliliters, the total amount of blood loss, to a pretty high place. I didn't have to have a blood transfusion, but I do remember them asking me in the very beginning, should you need a blood transfusion, you know, will you accept that, etc., etc. And I remember they called to like have the blood ready, but I never needed it. And the blood never came into the room, but they did make a call of like, hey, this is a possibility that this may happen. This woman may need this blood. Like, I don't even know how to say, like, it's so emotional to think back on it, but everything happened so quick and everyone sprung into action and took care of me, and I am so, so grateful. All in all, I lost 1,310 milliliters of blood. So that was quite a bit. That was definitely a hemorrhage, and I am just so grateful for everyone who sprung into action and knew what to do. I will say that the woman who inserted my emergency IV, she was not playing any games, okay? And she came along to the other side to chart that she had, you know, done the emergency IV, and she was another Black woman. I don't know if she was a mom or not, but she was a nurse, and she just saw in my face like the sheer, I guess, fear or terror. Even though I was trying to keep myself calm on the inside, I can't hide my face very well. So she literally just stopped what she was doing. She touched like my arm on this side and she said, we got you. She's like, we know what we're doing. We are not gonna let anything happen to you. And so those words coming from her in that moment were just amazing, and I am so appreciative of it, because that was a fear that I had, being a Black woman, having fibroids, giving birth again in this country where Black women have the highest rates of infant mortality, maternal mortality. Like, just the rates for us as Black women are insane, and it's always a fear of mine, but she calmed me down in a way that I don't think anyone else could have. And so I appreciate her for that. And so I think it's because my uterus wasn't contracting the way that it was supposed to, these large clots started to form and leave my body in that way. So that's kind of what caused that issue. After everything, you know, we were in the clear, Aurora came back, we started to nurse, my husband did some skin to skin, and things were just perfect. We were moved later that morning to the postpartum room, so we gathered all of our things. I was in a wheelchair, and you know, I did the first urine to like make sure everything was okay. And we settled into the postpartum room. We had the rest of that day, Mother's Day, was in the hospital, and then I came home, I wanna say on the 9th. So like the day after that, in the late afternoon. So I didn't stay that long, especially due to COVID. You know, they kind of want to get you in and out, but everything was good. We had a bit of a scare and then everything was good again. And even in postpartum, people saw what happened because it's listed in your chart, and like almost every nurse was like, wow, you look so great. You look great to have like dealt with all the blood loss that you had. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. They did check because my daughter was so big. She had a little bit of jaundice, so they were checking her bilirubin levels as well, as long as keeping an eye on me in the postpartum room. So my labor and delivery story was one that I couldn't have predicted. It was an induction. First off, I went into labor naturally with my first daughter. There was this whole scare with the blood loss and the blood clot and the loss of blood and just all of that. So we are good, we are safe, we are healthy, and my baby girl is thriving. But I did want to share that story in case any of you were wondering, in case any of you are curious. We'll be having an induction. Every story is different, so I don't mean this to scare anyone, but I do want to always be honest, and this was something that was requested here on my channel because I said, you know, things kind of took a turn a little bit and my experience was very interesting, and so there were a lot of people who wanted to hear more about that. But we are doing great over here. All right, thank you all so much for watching my birth story with Aurora. I wanted to make sure that I get this story out there because it is mine and it could be beneficial to someone else who may need to hear it, may give the motivation for someone else to share their story. But I think when we share our stories, we are connecting and we are giving ourselves and others permission to do the same, and we're also building community and removing that stigma, that feeling of I'm alone and no one understands and I'm the only one who's been through this. So yeah, I hope that this video was helpful in some way or another. I thank you all so much for watching. If you have made it this far, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm on my way to 5,000 subscribers, but I need your help. So go ahead and click that subscribe button. I will see you right back here in my next video. And as always, remember to fill your cup. Bye.